Welcome to Not a Roofers podcast, where we discuss roofing
without all the jargon. I'm Brianna.
And I'm Charity.
And this is today's episode.
Hello, and welcome back to Not a Roofers podcast. Today, we are discussing valleys, and there are 3 types. Brianna, give us a definition.
So, there's only one definition for valley, even though there are 3 different types. So, the definition of valley is it's a noun, and it is the intersection of 2 roof slopes. So, what this looks like on a roof, it usually is on residential roofs. This does not mean it can't be on a commercial building, but
it's just really rare.
Yeah, you're just most likely going to see it on residential roofs, but you know that like V section where like the roofs meet and it looks like a V on the roof. That's what a valley is. So, Charity, what are the types of valleys?
Well, we have open valleys, closed valleys, and woven valleys.
So, even though there aren't official definitions of what those are, I will explain. So, an open valley is a valley in which metal is used in where the V is, and the shingles do not cover the valley. A closed valley is where the shingles will cover the valley, they'll like meet and cover it. And a woven valley is a very specific type of closed valley where the shingles are overlapped in a way that it looks like weaving.
So, what you're saying is an open valley utilizes flashing and a closed valley doesn't. I know we haven't done flashing yet. Don't worry, we'll get to it.
What kind of problems do valleys present to the roof? Because let's be fair, whenever we talk about these terms, we always add in, what kind of problems that area of the roof will present to somebody. So, what are some of the problems?
Well, so I think we should do this like each individual type. So like with an open valley, since the flashing or metal is going over top of that, the issue could be that the flashing starts to come up and then you'll end up with the water going underneath it. And if the shingles are not installed correctly, there will be leakage. Which is never a good issue.
No. And this is not to say that open flashing is bad. It's just that is one of the problems that can come about from it. To counteract that, closed flashing, what can happen is even though it is all covered, water can still get underneath the shingles and cause problems. But that's not usually a huge problem, but it is
but
possible.
Poor installation is. Because if they don't cut the shingles right and they don't line up just exactly, you end up with the same issue of leakage getting underneath, or water getting underneath of them, causing leakage.
Yeah. And that is similar to woven valleys. Honestly, woven valleys aren't talked about a lot because it's a lot more time consuming to create a woven valley.
Well, not only that, but woven valleys should never be installed on a roof that has a pitch less than 412. So they're not as commonly installed.
Yeah, so we probably won't talk about woven valleys a lot in the rest of this episode. Another problem with open valleys is they cost more because of the fact that you have to get the metal flashings to be fastened at the roof joint, where with closed valleys you don't need that metal flashing because it will be covered with the shingles.
And I would actually say, if you look at your houses and your neighbors' houses, they're actually more likely to have the closed valleys versus the open valleys because that's just mostly how residential roofing is done.
It is.
I see more of the open valleys on churches.
Yeah, so it all comes down the type of valley you have. It's not that one is better than another, but it all comes down to design and aesthetic. But I will get into that in a second. Um, Another thing that I just wanted to mention before we moved on to reasons why one will be picked over the other is there are a couple things to note with all valleys. A problem that you need to be aware of is that because of the nature of a valley, it is very likely that it will collect debris such as leaves or twigs or anything, but it also means that when it snows or rains, that is where it's going to go and it's going to just chill out. And so with an open valley, when snow and water happens, it will more quickly leave your roof, but with a closed valley, it'll kind of sit around. And when it sits around on shingles, it is likely you will lose granules on your roof, which happens naturally anyway, but valleys definitely lose granules at a higher rate. There are reasons why people pick open valleys or closed valleys. And Charity, let's get into those.
So there are 3 reasons why you would go with a open valley or a closed valley. The first one would be the aesthetics. I like a good looking roof. When I was house shopping, I looked at the roof because I want my roof to look nice. All of the houses I looked at have closed valleys because of where I live. But the contractors or even the home buyer or seller or the architect determines what type of valley is being used. The reason why I say the buyer or seller or the owner is because sometimes you replace your roof, which gives you now the option to determine what type of valley you want, which is maybe a thought you've never had before.
Another reason why valleys are chose the way they are is because of the cost of them. As I mentioned earlier, when you have a open valley, you have to buy that metal flashing that gets put down instead of not having to buy it when you have a closed or woven valley. And so that'll play into why one is chosen over the other. It's not saying that one is better than the other. It's just how much money are you realistically willing to spend on your roof.
And then the third reason is functionality. Functionality is all about how it is installed. So you have your closed valleys, and they are better at withholding water or snow. But what can happen is they can lose granules. And then with the loss of granules, leaking could happen. The water works its way underneath. And then with open valleys, with the flashing, it does block the water and the snow and the ice from getting under there. But at the top, if the shingles are not put in correctly, water can start getting underneath it and will work its way down into that valley underneath the flashing, which is an issue. Both of these can be handled easily by just having a good contractor that you trust doing the repair or replacement of your valleys.
Yeah. So, anything else on valleys, Charity?
Nope, not for me.
Sounds good. Well, now you know just a little bit more about valleys, and let's see what we think of a definition. Um, you know, I have to say this definition was pretty simple. The intersection of two roof slopes. I don't know how much we can simplify
I
that.
think that is perfect. I don't
Yeah.
think that this time we actually need to change anything because that That's
You can't
really
make it better.
no, you can't. You can make it
So
longer and more complicated.
I'm good at that. So, well, thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you learned something. If you have any roofing terms that you want us to discuss, we would love to hear from you. You can reach us on our social media channels or by emailing us at marketing@roofmedics.com. While you're at it, make sure you're following us, sharing the podcast, and I think that's all. So we will see you next time.
Bye.
That brings us to the end of today's episode. If you've been loving what you're hearing, make sure to press the subscribe button so you get notified anytime we post a new episode. Episodes come out on Monday and Fridays. Please feel free to share this podcast with a friend. We'd love everybody to be able to join us and learn more about the roofing industry as we go along on this journey. If you don't already, follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. I will put all of our information down in the show notes below. Feel free to contact us with any questions or any roofing ideas that you would love for us to talk about. I hope you have a great day, and we will see you next time.